And so what's happening? So lived experience leadership is something that we've been working on, not just myself, but a whole group of lived experience leaders. And today in modern society, lived experience leadership and lived experience leaders, those who had first-hand, direct experience of the social issues or injustices they're tackling, lack visibility, lack credibility, their knowledge isn't seen as credible, they lack opportunity, resource and support, and not just to do small little community-led projects, to actually lead system and populations change. A number of lived experience leaders I've had the honour of working with and talking to have been systems change makers. They've been practitioners who are totally disrupting systems in the UK and the US and the West, but yet they have lack of any visibility, especially in the UK with a lot of people in ivory towers in London who are very good human beings who do mean well, but often don't even know that they're there. Right, I'm really crap at holding this, I'm just going to chuck them. So what's happening? And so, sorry about that. So my name's Baljeet Sandhu. I am, oh, did that fall, or did you, so who am I? I'm a recovering human rights lawyer. So I used to be a human rights lawyer for a long time, specialising in refugee and international human rights law, then later on children's rights law. I had the honour and privilege of representing incredible change makers from around the world who had been forced to flee their countries and come to our countries for safety and sanctuary, because often their lives were put in danger because of the work and the change making they were doing to better the lives of the communities they shared those experiences with. As soon as they landed in Europe, they became codependent, vulnerable asylum seekers. Rather than seeing them as change makers, as pioneers of change, as leaders in their own right. And so what was going on? So basically it was, and also I had the honour of working with working class communities, because I'm from a migrant family, worked from a working class family in Nottingham, and I'd also seen incredible community leaders from white working class communities pioneering change in local communities. But why weren't they actually recognised? Why weren't they visible? And so I started to ask a lot of questions in the sector, because once we did really well, you take the government to court, you then do really well, you then get known in the sector. I then had a seat around the power table. So I then had a seat around the power table, and the face of the social leaders changed significantly. There were no leaders with lived experience around those tables. There were great leaders, but it wasn't the leaders who were representative of the communities, and they lacked the knowledge and human wisdom. Not just the voice, the human wisdom that flourishes across society. And so that's when I thought, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And when I started to actually shift the dial and ask incredible CEOs, public sector leads, leaders working across, social entrepreneurs, working across subsectors, not just refugee and migrant sector, the disability sector, the mental health sector, the youth justice system. I started to say, when I shifted the dial from mere civic engagement, from participation over to leadership, that's when the pushback started, because everyone was very happy to talk about their participation initiatives. They're doing great work with service users and beneficiaries in the communities, even calling them partners. But actually when we started to shift the dial to leadership, that's when there was a massive pushback. Baljeet, one person's experience, a lived experience of a social issue doesn't make them an expert of others. It's quite tokenistic, lived experience leaders can be vulnerable or lack the technical skills. And so that's when I realised, like I did when I was a lawyer, when I'm niggling people and annoying them, that means I'm doing something right. So what I did was I went to funders, and I said to funders, right, let's move this away from the external identities of communities and the socially marginalised to human wisdom. Do we value lived experience knowledge? The knowledge that we gather through the lived experiences we have, the insights, the perspectives. Absolutely. And it's fundamental to do for the work that we do. Okay, if that's the case, how are we currently giving that wisdom and human knowledge agency in the social good ecosystem? Well, we leave that to our grantees. And our grantees are often large organisations who often just have connection with service users. Well, service users may not want to be change makers. They might not want to be leaders. So that's the real connection many of the organisations have. So then I said, well, okay, so how are they giving agency to many of these communities and these leaders? Well, we haven't really moved beyond focus group fodder and consultations and one-off events where we extract information, because we do know that knowledge is important. But fast forward, human-centered design, hackathons. We know we need that knowledge, but yet we're not willing to give agency to the leadership and the change-making capacity in those communities. So I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to end on a positive. And the positive is this, and I'm going to leave that now, is ultimately, we all know that lived experience is important. But we don't see, at the moment, we've done well. We've gone from seeing communities we serve as paupers, to beneficiaries, to even being participants. But we haven't really moved beyond giving voice. Well, communities are shouting loud and proud. We need to start centering not only voice, but actually centering human wisdom and knowledge we need for social change in this planet and in this world. And right now we're not doing that. And so how do you do that? Well, lived experience leaders are also working across your communities. They're not just beneficiaries and service users. Many have lived and learned experience. So what we've been doing is trying to bring together very experienced lived experience leaders. And we carried out some research and said to them, tell us about yourselves. And the first thing is that, first of all, we need definitions matter, and we need a new definition. Because we're not service users, we're not beneficiaries. Lived experience leadership, we want to own that. And what lived experience leadership is simply this. I have lived experience, it could be intersectional, everyone's lived, everyone has experiences. But just because I'm black doesn't mean I'm a lived experience leader. I may be a social entrepreneur working in tech innovation, but that does not make me a lived experience leader. So the number of black and brown communities in the UK saying, I now seem to have this perceived lived experience because this is the terminology being used by the sector. But actually lived experience leaders are those who have moved beyond self and have activated the knowledge from their lived experience, often in combination with their learned experience, to create change and pioneer change. And we have incredible leaders who are lawyers, who are doctors, who are CEOs of organisations. They're flourishing across society but often don't have visibility. And it's time now to work together. There's been a bit of an anxiety in the sector about, lived experience leaders think they might know everything. There's not one lived experience leader out there that I've met in the UK, US, or across the world who says they know it all. They're just saying, right now, the pervasive imbalance in our leadership is seriously wrong. It's harmful, there's a damaging disconnect. We need to come together more than ever, and yet we're not creating the conditions and the environment to allow that to happen. So there's a request to say, we need to come together. We need lived and learned to come together. We need the worlds to come together. And there's something seriously going on where we can't do that. And also now, in the spirit of shifting power, lived experience leaders who have both lived and learned have said, okay, what's our responsibility? Because this isn't just about saying to communities, you now have the answers, and then saying to you all, step back. Actually, it's about working together. So there's a whole movement. So LEx Move is the lived experience movement, www.lexmovement.org. There's a report there. We have over 1,000 lived experience leaders with lived and learned experience from around the world, mobilising in the UK and the US. We've had people from South Africa, from Australia reach out to us. It is unconstituted, it is not owned by anyone, it is lived experience leaders who are change makers, innovators, policy strategists, who want to now work together with you as allies to give back. So if you know lived experience leaders, please tell them to get in touch.